Jax Moreno paced anxiously in his quarters aboard the starship Concordia. The polished steel walls reflected flashes of his maroon diplomatic attire, a color meant to signal peaceful intentions to most known species in the galaxy, or so he hoped. He tugged at his collar, feeling the weight of the task ahead. Earth had only recently joined the Galactic Alliance, and humanity's representatives were still regarded with a mix of curiosity and cautious skepticism. Today's challenge: the first galactic culinary exchange on Galantha Prime. His assistant, Mina Cho, appeared at the door, tablet in hand. "Jax, you're doing it again." "Doing what?" "Practicing how to smile without showing your teeth," she smirked. "You look like you're in pain." Jax grimaced, his expression transforming into a pained grimace. "Noted. No toothy grins. The Lithari see it as a predatory display, right?" "Exactly," Mina confirmed, scrolling through notes. "Also, avoid discussing digestion, fermentation, or any topic involving bacteria. The Torsh are deeply sensitive about microbes." "Check," Jax said, exhaling deeply. "So all I have to do is smile without smiling, never mention stomachs, and somehow convince a room full of aliens that Earth food won't kill them." Mina raised an eyebrow. "Pretty much, except she hesitated, glancing at the crate behind her. About that last part, one have been reviewing our cultural culinary contribution." Jax followed her gaze. The crate's label read "Earth Mild Chili Curry Authentic Recipe." A faint aroma seeped through the seals, tantalizingly familiar but potentially lethal for alien physiology. "Please tell me you're joking," he said, voice dropping. "Who thought this was a good idea?" Mina shrugged, exasperated. It was a last-minute decision. The chefs insisted it represented Earth's passion for flavor and spice. "It's marked mild by Terran standards, but..." Jax winced. Mild meant different things to different people. On Earth, it meant a hint of warmth, and a playful tingle. Elsewhere in the galaxy, it might be a death sentence. What do we know about the Galanthians' tolerance for spice? Not much, Mina admitted, but their cuisine is typically bland. Think boiled roots and gelatinous cubes. "Great," Jax muttered, running a hand through his hair. "This won't end well." The ship's intercom crackled. "Ambassador Moreno, we're approaching Galantha Prime. Prepare for landing." Jax nodded to Mina, his resolve hardening. He had to make the best of it. Earth's culinary pride was at stake, not to mention their fragile position in the Galactic Alliance. Together, they carried the crate to the landing bay. The landing was smooth, but Jax barely noticed. The Galanthian city of Tharlas unfolded before him, a dazzling expanse of crystalline spires, shimmering bridges, and pathways suspended on translucent platforms. Light refracted through every structure, casting intricate patterns across the sky. The alien atmosphere tingled against his skin, something about the air's density and ionization. "Ambassador Moreno," a voice called out. Jax turned to see their host, Grand Scholar Narthos, gliding toward them. Narthos was tall, with pale green skin that shimmered faintly under the sunlight. 6 expressive eyes studied Jax with curious intensity. Vines extended from Narthos's torso, each moving independently, giving the impression that he was always in motion. "Grand Scholar," Jax said, extending a hand. Narthos responded with a vine, wrapping it delicately around Jax's hand in a gesture that was half handshake, half hug. "We are honored to host Earth's first contribution to the Galactic Culinary Exchange," Narthos intoned. "Our council eagerly anticipates your offering." Jax forced a smile, closed-lipped, and inclined his head. "The honor is ours, Grand Scholar. We bring a dish that represents Earth's vibrant flavors." As they walked through the city, Mina whispered in Jax's ear, "Vibrant. Good word choice." The banquet hall was an architectural marvel, a dome of transparent crystal that amplified every sound and reflected every movement. Delegates from dozens of species were seated around an expansive circular table. Hovering chandeliers emitted soft, warm light that changed hue depending on the speaker's tone, a feature meant to enhance cross-species empathy. "Ambassador Moreno," Narthos announced, raising a vine to quiet the murmuring crowd. "The Galactic Alliance welcomes your offering." Jax stepped forward, nerves buzzing. Mina placed the crate on the table and carefully unsealed it. A small, controlled hiss escaped, followed by a wave of rich aroma notes of cumin, coriander, turmeric, and chili. It was a comforting scent to humans, a harbinger of warmth in family gatherings. To everyone else, it was the prelude to chaos. Jax scooped a portion of the mild chili curry into small crystalline bowls. This is a dish cherished on Earth, a blend of spices that embodies warmth, hospitality, and adventure. He placed one bowl before Narthos, who eyed it warily. The Grand Scholar's vine quivered. "Is this dangerous?" "Not at all," Jax assured him, forcing a calmness into his voice he didn't feel. "It's mild." Narthos nodded slowly. He lifted a crystalline spoon, dipped it into the curry, and brought it to his mouth. The room fell silent. For a moment, everything seemed fine. Then Narthos's 6 eyes widened in unison. His vines flailed, slapping against the table. A noise that could only be described as a wheezing honk erupted from his throat. He reached for a glass of water but knocked it over in his haste. Grand Scholar Jax asked, alarmed. Narthos opened his mouth to speak, but only a thin stream of blue vapor emerged. Nearby, a torch delegate leaned over, sniffed the air, and immediately emitted a high-pitched screech before collapsing. The Lithari ambassador, glowing a bright red, a shade associated with panic in their species, began vibrating intensely. The Galanthian guards rushed forward, mistaking the scene for an attack. Alarms blared. Jax raised his hands defensively. "Wait, it's just food. It's not a weapon." It was too late. The room was in chaos. Delegates fled, some scrambling over each other in their haste. The torch delegate had recovered enough to point a claw at Jax. "Terran ambassador, what have you done?" Jax's mouth went dry. "It's mild." Several aliens screamed. Amid the swirling chaos, Jax Moreno barely had time to blink. Alarms blared from crystalline consoles, and emergency medics rushed in, their translucent uniforms shimmering as they administered alien treatments to the fallen. The Galanthian guards surrounded him, vines twitching with tension as they sized him up. Jax's diplomatic training kicked in. He raised his hands, palms open, projecting non-aggression. "Everyone, calm down," he pleaded. "It's just mild curry. No harm intended." His words were met with a renewed chorus of distress. One guard, eyes wide with suspicion, jabbed a device toward him. "Silence. You have brought pain disguised as sustenance." Jax swallowed, catching sight of Grand Scholar Narthos being propped up by medics. The Galanthian leader's eyes were still watering, his pale green skin now tinged with an unsettling mauve. He coughed a wheezing, raspy sound and waved a vine weakly. I demand clarity," Narthos managed between gasps, his voice straining. "Ambassador Moreno, what precisely is this mild substance you have brought us?" Jax stepped forward, ignoring the guard's warning gestures. He drew a deep breath. "It's food, Grand Scholar. A representation of Earth's culinary heritage. We call it mild because it is considered low on our spice scale." A collective shudder ran through the room. Narthos's 6 eyes blinked in staggered unison, as if processing the information in layers. "Low on your scale." "Yes," Jax said, feeling sweat bead on his forehead. "There are much spicier dishes on Earth." Narthos's head lolled back, as if the very thought had overwhelmed him. "Impossible," he rasped. The medics moved in, administering cooling agents to his chest. "You must be deceiving us. No species would willingly consume this level of torment." Several delegates murmured in agreement. From the far end of the table, a Frilcan, a species known for their subterranean dwelling and love of bland root mush, rose shakily. "Ambassador Moreno, your actions have caused great distress. The Council must deliberate on Earth's continued participation in the Galactic Alliance." Jax's stomach clenched. The weight of his mission pressed down like a planetary gravity field. He stepped forward, determination hardening his features. "Grand Scholar, esteemed delegates, Earth did not come here to harm. Our intention was cultural exchange and understanding. If our offering caused distress, it was purely unintentional." Narthos wheezed, but there was a spark of curiosity in his gaze. "Then you must demonstrate." "Demonstrate," Jax echoed, unsure. Narthos nodded, a slow, deliberate gesture. Prove that this mild dish is truly as you claim. Consume it before us all. Jax's heart skipped a beat. Consume it. Yes, Narthos said, his voice regaining strength. Show us that this is not a weapon of malice but a genuine taste of earth. Jax hesitated. The Galanthian guards stood ready, their vines tense with the possibility of violence. Around the room, delegates watched with wary anticipation. He could feel the diplomatic stakes tightening around his neck. His assistant, Mina, caught his eye and mouthed, "You've got this." She was pale but resolute. "Fine," Jax said, his voice steadier than he felt. "I will." The room fell eerily silent as Jax lifted the crystalline spoon. Mina, ever the stalwart assistant, stepped forward and took her own portion. Her eyes met his, and they shared a moment of solidarity. Together they would face whatever came next, be it fire, pain, or galactic ridicule. With a deep breath, Jax lifted the spoon to his lips. The familiar, complex heat washed over his tongue, a dance of warmth, tang, and spice. It was intense, yes, but manageable. He swallowed, savoring the flavors even as he braced for impact. Beside him, Mina did the same, her face a picture of controlled determination. The room erupted not in panic this time, but in stunned disbelief. The sight of two humans willingly consuming the curry of chaos seemed to short-circuit every preconceived notion about Terrans. Delegates leaned closer, eyes wide, while others whispered furiously to their colleagues. Narthos's vines trembled. "How is it possible?" he asked, voice low and awed. "You consume this with no ill effect." Jax nodded, sweat trickling down his neck. "For humans, this level of spice is stimulating, but not harmful. We have adapted to it over centuries." Another murmur swept through the room. A Lithari, still faintly glowing red, spoke up. "Adapted? To pain." "Not pain," Mina interjected, voice firm. "Flavor. We experience it as heat, yes, but it brings joy, excitement, even comfort." "Comfort," a Torsh delegate croaked, disbelief etched across his carapace. Jax took another bite, forcing himself to smile despite the growing heat in his mouth. "Yes, we even use it to challenge ourselves. There are contests to see who can endure the hottest foods. For some, it's a form of bonding." A stunned silence followed. Jax could see it, the slow, creeping realization that humans were a species not just capable of withstanding adversity, but actively seeking it out for amusement. This revelation, more than anything, seemed to unsettle the room. A Frelkin delegate, still pale, spoke hesitantly. "Ambassador, you willingly endure discomfort. For pleasure." Jax nodded. "It's part of who we are. We adapt, grow, and yes, sometimes we push limits just to see how far we can go." Narthos closed his eyes, as if processing a difficult equation. When he opened them, he gestured to the guards. "Stand down." The tension in the room eased. Slowly, cautiously, the guards withdrew. Delegates exchanged wary glances, but no one moved to flee or protest. Jax felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, they could salvage this. "Ambassador Moreno," Narthos said, his tone softer, "your explanation intrigues us, but it does not erase the consequences. The Galactic Council must deliberate on Earth's recklessness." "Understood," Jax said, bowing his head. "I only ask for fair consideration." As the delegates filed out of the room, the air crackled with a mix of fear, confusion, and fascination. Narthos paused by Jax, a curious light in his eyes. "Ambassador, your species is peculiar. Perhaps there is more to learn from you than we imagined." With that, he departed, leaving Jax and Mina standing alone in the now quiet hall. Mina let out a long breath. Well, that could have gone worse. Jax chuckled, though his heart still pounded. "Next time, remind me to bring mashed potatoes." "Bland mashed potatoes," Mina clarified, grinning despite everything. "Very bland," Jax agreed. But deep down, he knew the events of the day were far from over. The galaxy had just glimpsed a small taste of human resilience, and they weren't quite sure what to make of it. Jax Moreno had faced interplanetary negotiations before, but standing in the grand chambers of Galantha Prime's High Council, he felt as though the ground might swallow him whole. The chamber was an amphitheater of glowing crystal, its walls shifting hues with the changing emotions of the audience. Right now, it was a throbbing red-orange, somewhere between outrage and mild panic. At the center, seated upon a dais of shifting light, was Grand Scholar Narthos. His 6 eyes moved independently, studying Jax with a mixture of intrigue and suspicion. Behind him, the assembled council members, representatives of dozens of species, watched with varying degrees of apprehension. The smell of burnt spices lingered, a reminder of the previous day's fiasco. Jax adjusted his collar. He and Mina had been escorted here after a night of uneasy rest. Now Earth's place in the Galactic Alliance hung in the balance, all thanks to one mild curry. Mild. The word now seemed almost ironic. Ambassador Moreno Narthos began, his voice echoing through the chamber. The council has convened to determine the intent and nature of your culinary contribution. Earth's membership is at risk. How do you plead? The weight of the question pressed down on Jax's shoulders. With all due respect, Grand Scholar, Earth pleads misunderstood. A ripple of murmurs coursed through the chamber. Narthos raised a vine to silence them. Explain. Jax stepped forward, carefully. Spice is not just a flavor to humans, it's a tradition. It is deeply rooted in our cultures and history. We use it to challenge ourselves, to bring people together, even to mark important occasions. It is not a weapon never meant to harm. The incident was an unfortunate miscalculation. The Torch prosecutor, a spindly figure with iridescent tendrils, rose. You claim this spice is a unifying force on Earth, yet your offering caused chaos and suffering here. How do you reconcile this? Jax took a breath, steadying himself. Humans have adapted to many harsh environments. Our evolution has been shaped by resilience. Spices, like many challenges we've faced, became a way for us to adapt, endure, and even thrive. The intensity of what you experienced was mild to us because we have built a tolerance over centuries. The Lithari ambassador, a being who appeared to shimmer with barely contained energy, leaned forward. Tolerance? You treat discomfort as entertainment. Yes, Jax said plainly. It may seem strange, but humans often seek challenges that push us beyond our limits. For some, eating spicy food is just one way to prove strength or bond with others. The prosecutor narrowed its eyes, tendrils twitching. Prove it. Jax blinked. Prove? Prove your claim of resilience and tolerance. Submit yourself to an escalation of your spice. Demonstrate the strength you boast of, the prosecutor demanded, a thin smile playing across its lips. We will judge if your words hold truth. Jax's heart pounded. The council chamber erupted into murmurs again, but this time there was a spark of interest. The Grand Scholar nodded slowly, as if weighing an opportunity. Very well, Ambassador Moreno. Do you accept this trial? Beside him, Mina's eyes widened. Jax, are you sure? He met her gaze, seeing both concern and resolve. If they backed down now, Earth would forever be known as the species that poisoned their hosts and ran. If they succeeded, they might just earn a measure of respect. He nodded. I accept. An hour later, Jax found himself seated at a table in the center of the chamber, surrounded by an audience of skeptics and spectators. Arrayed before him were progressively spicier dishes, each prepared according to Earth's culinary traditions: jalapeno salsa, habanero paste, ghost pepper chutney, and at the far end, a dish containing the infamous Carolina Reaper sauce. The dishes glistened ominously under the chamber's shifting lights. Mina stood beside him, arms crossed. You don't have to do this, you know. Yeah, I do, Jax replied, his voice steadier than he felt. Besides, you're not getting rid of me that easily. The first dish, a small bowl of jalapeno salsa, was placed before him. Narthos spoke, his tone even. You may begin, Ambassador. Jax scooped a portion onto a piece of flatbread and took a bite. The heat was manageable, a familiar warmth that made his eyes water slightly. He chewed, swallowed, and nodded. Delicious. The council leaned forward, watching intently. Narthos gestured, and the next dish, a habanero paste, was placed before him. This time, the heat struck with sharper intensity, searing his tongue and throat. Jax kept his expression neutral, even as sweat beaded on his forehead. The Lithari ambassador spoke, voice tinged with disbelief. This brings you pleasure. It brings challenge, Jax corrected, his voice hoarse but controlled. A test of endurance. Mina passed him a towel. You're doing great, she whispered. Thanks, Jax croaked, before moving on to the ghost pepper chutney. As he took a bite, his entire mouth seemed to ignite. Tears streamed down his face, and he fought the urge to gasp for air. The room watched in stunned silence, every delegate hanging on his reaction. Slowly, painfully, he swallowed. His breath came in ragged gasps. Another delightful Earth specialty. The prosecutor's tendrils twitched again, this time with what might have been admiration. You truly endure this willingly. Humans, Jax said, voice shaking, are good at pushing limits. Finally, the last dish was placed before him. The Carolina Reaper sauce glowed a deep, menacing red. Jax stared at it, feeling every nerve in his body screaming. The chamber seemed to hold its breath. Ambassador Moreno Narthos said softly, "There is no shame in stopping. Your point has been made." But Jax shook his head. He had to finish what he'd started. He dipped a spoon into the sauce, lifted it to his mouth, and swallowed. For a moment, the world went white. The heat was beyond anything he'd ever experienced, pure, unfiltered agony. His body rebelled, sweat pouring, pulse hammering. He felt Mina's hand on his shoulder, grounding him. Slowly, he regained control, forcing himself to breathe. The room erupted in applause, hesitant at first, then growing louder. Delegates rose, some in awe, others in disbelief. The Lithari ambassador glowed bright yellow, a sign of amazement. Narthos approached, vines trembling. You have proven your point, Ambassador Moreno. Humanity's resilience is undeniable. Jax nodded, too exhausted to speak. The trial had become a spectacle, but it had also earned him and Earth a grudging respect. The Galactic Council adjourned with a promise Earth would not be expelled. Instead, further study would be made into human customs, beginning with their baffling relationship with spice. As the chamber emptied, Mina handed Jax a bottle of water. You did it. Yet Jax croaked, voice barely above a whisper. Next time, though, remind me not to prove our resilience through hot sauce. She laughed, the sound a balm to his frayed nerves. I'll bring bland mashed potatoes. Very bland, Jax agreed, managing a weak smile. Together they walked out, knowing the galaxy would never see Earth or its mild dishes the same way again. In the aftermath of the spice trial, Jax Moreno found himself as an unexpected celebrity on Galantha Prime. News of his endurance spread through the Galactic Alliance's networks at light speed, turning him into a curious symbol of Earth's peculiar toughness. The phrase Earth mild was already being whispered with awe, fear, and even a dash of respect by those who had witnessed the spectacle. But with celebrity came complications. He awoke the next morning in his quarters, still feeling the lingering effects of the Carolina Reaper sauce. His mouth was less of a fiery pit now and more of a smoldering ember, but he swore he could feel his pulse in his taste buds. Beside him, Mina was scrolling through a tablet, her brow furrowed. Bad news, Jax rasped, reaching for a glass of water. Depends on your definition, she replied. You've been invited to appear on a Galanthian cultural program to demonstrate your unique tolerance for spice. It's being hailed as a rare and valuable trait. Great, Jax muttered, wincing as he swallowed. We're circus performers now. Could be worse, Mina said, though there was a note of genuine pride in her voice. You did it, Jax. You changed their perspective. No one's talking about expelling Earth anymore. They want to learn from us. Before he could respond, a soft chime indicated a visitor. The door slid open to reveal Grand Scholar Narthos, flanked by a small delegation. He stepped forward, his 6 eyes focused on Jax. For the first time since they met, there was a warmth in his gaze that bordered on fondness. Ambassador Moreno Narthos intoned, "May we speak?" Of course, Grand Scholar Jax gestured to the chairs around the table. Narthos took a seat, his vines curling and uncurling thoughtfully. Your demonstration yesterday was enlightening. I admit, we had never considered the possibility that a species might willingly seek discomfort as a form of growth. It's more about pushing boundaries than discomfort, Jax said. Spice is one example, but humans have a history of facing challenges, physical, mental, and otherwise, to become stronger. Narthos nodded slowly. Fascinating. We have convened with the Council and reached a decision. Earth shall retain its place in the Galactic Alliance. Furthermore, we propose a new cultural initiative. We wish to study this resilience you embody. It may offer insights into other challenges our collective faces. Jax exchanged a glance with Mina, who grinned. That's an honor, he said, surprised but pleased. But are you sure you're ready for more of our mild customs? Narthos let out a wheezing chuckle, a sound that was slowly becoming familiar. We will proceed cautiously. For now, there is much to learn. We have already documented over 400 safety protocols for handling Earth spices. Probably a good idea, Jax said, his own laughter blending with Narthos's. The last thing we need is another accidental inferno. The delegation rose, signaling that their meeting was complete. As Narthos moved to leave, he paused at the doorway. Ambassador Moreno, there is one more matter. Go ahead, Jax said. With your permission, we would like to introduce a controlled experience of Earth's cuisine at next year's Galactic Culinary Exchange, Narthos said, a glint of mischief in his eyes. A milder version, of course. Perhaps this time we will survive it. Jax grinned. I'd be honored. But let's agree no Carolina Reapers. Narthos inclined his head. Agreed. As the door slid shut, Jax leaned back in his chair, exhaustion giving way to relief. Earth had not only survived its first major diplomatic crisis, it had emerged with newfound respect. Perhaps not for the reasons anyone expected, but humanity's willingness to embrace challenge had left an indelible mark. Well, Mina said, breaking the silence. What's next, Ambassador? Jax thought for a moment, then smirked. Breakfast. Preferably something with 0 spice. Agreed, Mina said, laughing. The following weeks were a whirlwind of activity. The spice crisis, as it came to be known, led to a flurry of cultural exchanges and workshops on tolerance, resilience, and yes, culinary safety. Delegates from across the galaxy attended seminars on the human experience of challenge, eager to understand the baffling species that found joy in adversity. Jax became an unlikely ambassador not just for Earth's culinary quirks, but for the spirit of pushing limits and finding strength in struggle. By the time he departed Galantha Prime, he had forged alliances he never thought possible. The mild curry, now known as the legendary Inferno, among the Galanthians remained a symbol of both caution and curiosity. And as Jax and Mina boarded the starship Concordia for the next leg of their journey, he reflected on the peculiar power of one mild dish to change the fate of a planet. Ready for the next adventure? Mina asked as they settled into their seats. Jax smiled, the fiery memories still fresh but no longer painful, always. But maybe let's bring mashed potatoes just in case. With laughter and hope, they set course for new horizons, knowing that wherever they went, humanity's strange, resilient spirit would continue to astonish, perplex, and if necessary set tongues ablaze.